Good evening. I'm Dustin Seaton, the Gifted and Talented Specialist at the Northwest Arkansas Education Service Cooperative. And I'm also president of Arkansans for Gifted and Talented Education, uh, otherwise known as AGIT. AGIT is an organization that encourages the development and implementation of educational programs and initiatives throughout the state of Arkansas, especially when it comes to serving and identifying the gifted and talented youth of our state. So if you haven't done so already, check out our new website, giftedarkansas.org. You can like and follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or if you're on Facebook now, you're already there, you're seeing us. I encourage you to like us because we do a lot of these free webinars throughout the year. Part of being an Agate member, however, is access to additional webinars such as the one tonight, as well as the recordings and other things sponsored by our enrichment committee. Tonight's webinar is entitled Learn How Not to Pay the Sticker Price for College. So it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Neeta Vallab, the founder and creator of meritmore.com. It's a free tool to help families find good merit aid options when making a list of colleges and universities to apply to. I know that's a key issue at this time of year. Merit aid is the single largest pool of non-money available to families, and currently it's very difficult to figure out which schools are likely to give out this type of aid. Another popular feature of her website that I was already bragging about was the application task manager, because applicants can track the tasks and deadlines for admissions on one screen with status bars to show the progress. We did organizational strategies for gifted students back in October. So we know all students, especially our gifted kids, need task trackers and status bars to keep us focused and on track. So I encourage you to sit back and relax, listen from wherever you are, but know that we're using the webinar feature on Zoom. So you don't have to unmute or play with your video screen or your backdrop. You can ask questions to our presenter tonight utilizing the Q&A button at the bottom, or the chat box is also available, but that will mainly be used for making comments, sharing links, and so forth like that. Don't worry, it is Tuesday night, understandably. Many of you may have to leave or go put the kids to bed. We are recording tonight, and we will have the video posted on our website, giftedarkansas.org, or this live streaming on the Facebook page. So with that said, I'm happy to turn over the program to Ms. Vallab to begin tonight's presentation.
Thank you so much, Dustin, and thank you, parents, for taking time out to listen to this presentation. As a parent myself, I know that a Tuesday night is particularly stressful. So thank you guys for hanging in there. My background is, I actually have a background in software development, and I have 3 public school kids. And 2 years ago, we went through the college admissions process with my firstborn. And we started out pretty cocky, thinking we had planned appropriately. And then it became pretty obvious that we didn't know what was going on. And we really went out and tried to figure out how are we going to pay for college, which was going to be really the big issue for us. And what I couldn't find really very directly on all the big websites for parents, including College Board's website, college data, and so many other of sort of the big sites, is how do middle and upper middle class families afford college? It's actually pretty absurd when you start looking at the numbers. And what I came to realize over time is there actually is this pool of money available called merit aid, and it's given out directly by colleges, and it's actually the biggest pool of non-loan money available, but there was no really easy way to access that. And I knew that's something that software could solve if I could get my hands on the data. And I went about first building a tool just for myself and my friends, and everybody thought it was useful. And I spent 1.5 years sort of getting feedback and making it better and more robust, and adding some other features that I thought were useful as we sort of struggled the first time through it. We're going through it right now with my son the second time. So things are a little bit easier, but we still have a lot of applications in the bin, and we're 2 weeks to the regular application deadline. So I haven't listened to all of my own advice. So that's sort of my background. I'm going to do sort of just a quick deck and sort of walk you through sort of the mechanics, and then I'll show you sort of how the site works. Okay, let's see.
And I guess while you're pulling that up, we already have one question. Can
Yep.
students make an account on your site?
Yes, anyone can. Okay, I pulled up a window with everything, and so I'm going to go to this. Okay, so the big question is how to avoid paying sticker price. And I think the first thing to understand is what is sticker price? And that's the cost of attendance that colleges will post publicly about tuition plus room and board. So here's sort of an example of 4 different schools, 2 public and 2 private. And this is their sticker price for cost of attendance, anywhere from 23,000. That's an in-state institution, up to 72, 73,000. And really the range for private schools now, I think, is about 60 to 80 for sticker price. So when we saw this, we were like, that's insane. We need 3 other full-time salaries to pay for 4 years of college for 3 kids. And we asked, how will we pay for college? And the answer is really, I think, to follow the money. So after I did a lot of research, what we figured out was that there's this pool of money that's actually bigger than federal money and bigger than state aid, and it's called merit aid, and it flies a little bit under the radar in that it's not fully, colleges don't always have to fully report this amount to the federal government, and it's very hard to sort of get that number out of them. And there are some databases that have some of this information, but I think by design, colleges make it a little hard to figure that out. So what is merit aid? It's the largest pool of free money available, $8 to $10 billion. So that means, but when I say free, I mean it's loan free. So there's a ton of money for loans, but the goal is to avoid taking out loans. It's also called tuition discounting. And so you might, have read some articles, in the last year or 2 about this concept of tuition discounting. And that's money that's taken off the sticker price. It's used to entice applicants who are going to help boost an admissions stats for a college. So universities use this as a way to bring in kids who have higher GPAs and higher test scores as a way to elevate their own stats and sort of make themselves appear more competitive and thus, in their eyes, more desirable. So that's really what the purpose of this is. It's awarded directly by colleges, so doesn't involve the state or the federal government. It's not based on financial need. It's typically renewable for all 4 years. So if you get a $20,000 merit aid in your offer letter, that actually translates into $80,000 over 4 years. And small liberal arts schools tend to be more generous than state institutions. 1, because they have more funds, and 2, they're a little bit more concerned about sort of what is their statistical reputation. How do I get merit aid? So one thing that's very important is to make sure that you include strong merit aid matches in your school list. So really be conscious of the types of schools you put on the list. Many schools will require you to complete a FAFSA and or the CSS. These are 2 forms you fill out for financial aid, even if you don't qualify for need-based aid. So it's often a good idea just to do it. Many families think if they're middle class or upper middle class, they're not going to qualify, but many colleges will require this for that. And sometimes colleges will post specific grants on their websites and say, we have a presidential scholarship worth $10,000 a year, and we have, a trustee scholarship worth $5,000 a year. And oftentimes they don't post it. So that's one thing you should know, that you won't always find it on a website, and you won't always know if they may put requirements, like you have to have a GPA of this amount and a test score of this amount. And it's often hard to know if that's everybody who meets those cutoffs will be eligible, or and then it just goes into a pool and people get selected, or if everybody who meets those qualifications gets it. So there is a little bit of confusion about who gets it at the end of the day. The difference between merit aid and private scholarships, and I say this just because they are sort of separate pools of money, is that merit aid comes straight from colleges. It won't require a separate application, so you generally don't have to write essays or submit anything else for it. It's almost always renewable, and it might even be negotiable. So one of the strategies we used as a family is after we got our offer letters, we wrote appeal letters to schools and said, give us more money. And oftentimes there is more money to be given out of that merit pool. Why should applicants include strong merit aid schools in their list? I think actually the most important reason is to avoid sticker shock during acceptance season. So I've sort of been watching what happens through these last two cycles. And I think a lot of people are really focused on, can my child get into this school? And then acceptance letters come in, and then they realize there's no money we're going to get at that school and we can't afford to pay sticker price. So I think sticker shock in acceptance season is fairly significant. And if you have merit aid schools on your list and you get some money, there's often some wiggle room to bargain for more money. So those are good reasons to keep it on your list. The best strategies for not paying sticker price is, again, going back to the list. So typically when you make a list, you say, okay, a school is a target, a reach, or a safety. And we're always focused on whether or not a student is going to be accepted into a college. And what we're not spending much time thinking about is, are we going to be able to afford that option? So one thing we did is we assigned painful, stretch, and affordable next to every school on the list to make sure that we had a good balance of affordable schools. And, there's a little bit of guessing in merit aid, but you can cushion yourself to make sure that you're not going to end up with a bunch of acceptances that are painful. Run the net price calculator for every college. Be flexible and willing to include colleges that might not be on your radar the first time around when you're doing your first round of research, and always appeal for more money. So which colleges are likely to give you merit aid? We had the exact same question, and that's actually what drove me to build my site. And I'm going to pull up a new window here so it's clean.
And I'll post it in the chat too, so that way people can have a link that have joined us since you started.
I'm doing some research there, so I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of background about what when we say colleges use this to find kids that are going to elevate their own stats. What they're looking at is, sort of there's money put aside for kids who are great athletes or musicians or other things. All of those kids enhance a school's reputation, but having high stats makes a school look selective and desirable. So they're all, schools are also willing to do that. So what I did was I took all this data about, to try and find what is the top quartile for scores and for GPA. And in my research, all these professionals said, if you can figure out what the top quartile is, that's a pretty good match for a school that's going to give you money, because that your kid is going to bring up their stats. So we did this algorithm and we figured out where you're going to be top quartile for, which before this, there was sort of a very time-intensive multi-spreadsheet way to do it, but software to the rescue. So I'm going to add, just, to show you how this works, at ACT score of 32. And this year I've also made this button to calculate this without SAT or ACT, because I know a lot of families haven't been able to take tests and you still want to be able to find some good options for yourself. And I'm just going to say the GPA is 3.9. And I'm just going to do far west, you're not Alaska. Connecticut. So you just put your child's stats in and you get results. So in the results, what I've done is I've broken the results down into two types of matches. Your strongest matches. So in here, you are at the top quartile for both of those categories. And 3, here's good matches. So these are all also matches in which you're going to lift a college's stats, but just not to the same degree as strongest matches. So these are also great matches to consider. And one thing I say is, if your child has any sort of other activities they do, any other strengths, it's really good to take a look at the good matches, because they're going to be able to pair that special interest with still being, still having good stats. So in this view, this table breaks down sort of what I think are all the big pieces of information you want to look at: your cost, the percentage of freshmen that received merit aid, the average amount of merit aid, the average GPA for that school, SAT, ACT, and the acceptance rate. Each one of these categories is sortable. So you sort by whatever you want, and you can sort of go down and pick a school. So I'm going to pick a school right here, and I'll show you some of the details we offer for each school. So we have some basic information up here. That's the same sort of information you'll find on other sites. And I'll show you some of the things that we do a little differently. So right up top, we're giving you some information about merit aid. So if you're interested in this school, this is a pretty good bet. 36% of freshmen receive merit aid, so 1/3 of them. And the average amount of aid is $12,000. And based on your stats, we give you the highest merit match you can get, which is the best smiley face I could find. So this is a strong, so what the system doesn't do is say you will get this amount of money. It's all based on likelihood given the type of data we have access to. We have some information about need-based aid also. In this box right here, there's a couple of fun things I wanted to include, which I couldn't find on other sites, is the early decision acceptance rate, and also the percentage of students accepted who enroll. That's the yield rate. And if you're a numbers cruncher, you might have some fun with that number. So deadlines, most other sites will have that. I wanted to put up some other affordability data. So one thing that's we learned was very important for, particularly in larger state institutions, is they often have a very low 4-year graduation rate. So it's just important, even from a financial perspective, to understand if you think your kid is going to end up graduating in 5 or 6 years, which is unfortunately the norm at many institutions. And a couple of other points that could be interesting for parents. And, it's important to sort of look forward to see sort of what is the debt that average students incur, and then also some future salary data that might be helpful for people. So one thing I did when my daughter was going through this process is I built a crowdsourced tool for families to enter their offer data, to be able to compare their own data apples to apples, and then to view the data that other families had submitted for that school, so that they could have really a much broader view of what other families were getting, and they could make decisions about whether or not to spend time and energy applying for more money. So all of that data that we got, there's about 2,000 records we have about what families actually received from colleges, broken down by their expected family contribution, stats of their kids, what's their admission type, was the money given in grants, was it given in loans? It's actually pretty interesting. We don't have it for every school, but many schools we do have that data. And then we've just broken down, we took the data we have and we sort of created some other interesting comparisons. in different tables. So this table is colleges with similar merit age award percentages and award amounts for just, if you're like, well, I like this college Occidental, give me some that are similar. So these are sort of the most similar I can find. If you were on a real estate site, it's a bit of a comps. And actually there's a whole, if you're a bit of a data freak, there's a tab I call comparatives, and we sort of do the same thing. We give you little charts for comparing that school against similar schools for different types of variables. There's a notes section where you can just add notes specifically for that school, a discussion, and then if you're interested in crime stats, there's a tab for each school for crime stats. So the function that Dustin was talking about is the application task manager. So when my daughter went through this process, we basically killed each other over, I don't know, we had about 3 different spreadsheets going, trying to manage deadlines and tasks. We were asking her, did you do demonstrated interest? Did you do this? Did you do that? And it really was a source of tension and a completely inefficient way to manage tasks. So I came up with this idea of an application task manager. So you can add all the schools you want into here. And then for each school, you pick the deadline you want for that school, and we'll tell you what the deadlines are that are coming up. And we've pre-populated, a bunch of the things that you have to get together for your application, a list for demonstrated interest, checklist for financial aid. You can customize this task list. So everybody ends up needing something different. So, let's say you just want to take off the financial aid items, then you can take that off. That disappears. You can add a task or deadline. So let's say call counselor, and that will show up. So this is fully customizable. And if you add a deadline, it will show up in the calendar view here. And there's some other boxes to track your common application sections and additional application materials. So that's basically what the site is. It's free for anyone to use. And, I hope it will be useful for parents. I'm going to, let's see, Dustin, I'm going to turn it back to you. I'm going to stop the share, and if people have questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We had one question pop in. How is this comparable to Big Future, which is on the College Board site?
Yeah, so Big Future, there are a couple of problems I have with Big Future. The first is that they only let you compare 3 schools at a time. So you can compare 3, and if you want to put 4, you take 1 out and add 1 in. So when you're doing, average applicant applies between 7 and 12 schools. So you should be able to compare 12 schools at a minimum against each other. And in a research phase, you probably have 20 schools on your big list. So, so I think for me, that's one big issue, that there was no good tool for me to compare the things that were important. You can't do a merit aid search on College Board. You can't even really find merit aid data there. And I think part of the reason is College Board is run by colleges, and it's not really in their interest, I think, to publicize this. And I mean, this is a guess on my part. Nobody has said this to me, but people have hinted that colleges want you to become emotionally invested in applying to a school, and then they want you to figure out how you're going to pay for it, right? So it's not in their interest for you to be freaked out about the cost, because that might prevent you from submitting an application. And at the end of the day, down the line, everybody can take out a bunch of loans if they're emotionally invested. So that's my conspiracy theory about why they don't present more information like this.
We had a comparable question. how is merit more comparable to Scholly, I guess is what it is, Scholarly, which charges a fee? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm a little. So in my mind, there's a whole bunch of uh, fee-based sites for scholarships. Now, so I have a couple of theories on this. This is not me speaking as an expert, but as a parent who sort of dug in. Um, for scholarship sites that charge money are often selling data to student loan corporations. So in general, I think that's just sort of a big thing. I mean, CapEx and FastWeb, that's essentially sort of how they work. So I think those are just warning signs to think about. I haven't looked at Scully recently. I don't believe, the last time I looked, they weren't trying to match you to merit scholarships. They were primarily private scholarships. The thing about this particular tool is it does this calculation of where a student is in the top quartile. I didn't see it because I couldn't find it as a parent. So I haven't been on Scholarly recently, but so this is very specific. This is just money that colleges are giving out.
So is the merit aid, you said it's money that they're giving out, but is it the money that you make appeals to get, or does the school actually call it merit aid on certain sites? Granted, you said it's not even published on every website. So
Yes.
how can, like, is there an application for the merit aid? We've had a couple questions about those things.
So typically there's no application for merit aid. Now there's no hard and fast rule. So my understanding is 99% of the time there's no application. Sometimes some colleges will have very specific scholarships that they have applications for, but the vast majority of merit aid is not based on a separate application.
Okay. Do counselors know about merit aid, or how would they go about advising students how to apply or obtain any merit aid at a school?
Yeah, I think it depends on the counselor.
Good point.
So I think some do, and I think some don't. So I don't know. I think it would just depend.
Okay. Do you have any tips on how to best handle the appeals process?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm in the process of building a tool that will help people automate that for people. So I'm going to do that. Hopefully, check back in a couple of months. But here's sort of what I learned, and I asked a bunch of people, and we spoke to a professional who had a good track record for doing this. And the way to ask for more money, the best way to do it is to say, thanks for accepting us. We've got another offer from a similar school. It's $5,000 more. We'd really love to come to your school, but we have to be sensitive about finances. Can you give us something better? So the best way to do it is to include, to pitch schools against each other that are similar in nature. And we actually did that fairly significantly. We got another $5,000 from a school, and that translates to another $20,000 over 4 years. So it's, sort of when you're getting your acceptances, it's good to sort of pair them up, not just by what they gave, but here's two schools that would be considered similar. How can we squeeze more money out of them?
Yeah, and I know parents, this is one of our more engaging webinars because it's about getting money for our kids. Do you have any recommendations on websites or sites for good scholarships that are available that you used with your children?
Right. Okay. So here's what I think about private scholarships. I literally was so overwhelmed by the emails I got from the big scholarship sites that I just really shut down. And I was like, I don't even know what their revenue stream is, but it cannot involve me because it felt very spammy. And I've spoken to a lot of people, and I'm like, what is the deal with these sites? Like, there's so little transparency. Oftentimes, parents don't know, sort of what actually happened to their application. We don't know how many people received awards. We don't know what the percentage of recipients were, right? Did 10,000 people apply and 2 out of those got it? So it seems to me like a big black box.
Mm-hmm.
And So generally, the advice I've heard is don't waste your time doing that. I'll tell you for two reasons. One is you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't have enough insight in those bigger applications to know what will ever happen. Most of the word of mouth is it's a waste of time. Secondly, what I've been told, and this works for us, is go find local scholarships for $500, $1,000, $2,000, because if you can get a handful of those, it adds up, and you're more likely to get those than you are the big ones. So I've heard a lot of people say that it worked for us. We went after a few small scholarships and we got it. I think outside of that scope are like things like Coca-Cola scholarship and those very well established foundations or scholarship programs that have their own application process outside of some of these big websites.
We had a comment about, this is an amazing website. I wish they'd have known about it last year when their child was entering. Is there a way, once a kid has been enrolled, to still go back and apply for merit scholarships, to your knowledge?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think that depends school by school. I mean, I feel like it doesn't hurt to ask.
Mhm.
Just ask. The problem is that I think we're in a weird place right now where colleges need to hold on to students, and that might be a lever for you. Typically, it wouldn't be a lever because they've already got you there and they can't say we accepted this kid with high scores, so give us credit for that. But we're in a place where they need to hold on to students, and I think just ask.
What criteria do you use to determine if schools are similar?
Okay, so I think you can look at the acceptance rate is sort of a big one that people just. I have issues with acceptance rate, but I think that people generally will look at institutions with similar acceptance rates and think that's comparable.
Okay. Kind of going back to the counselor option, you said, so do you have a specific person in mind of who you would contact? Would it be the admissions counselor, or is there somebody that is really the focal point contact person at a college university for merit scholarships?
Oh, so this is really a function of an admissions office.
Okay.
So because they're using this as an incentive tool, so they're using it to enhance their numbers. So a lot of people think it's a financial aid office thing, but it begins in the admissions office. Now, sometimes in the appeal process, they may bounce you over to financial aid, or you may end up having to talk to two people, but most of this really happens out of the admissions office.
Okay. Do you have any key points that should be included in a letter? Should we ask someone in the financial aid or from the admissions office? We're interested in merit scholarships or merit funding. Any key points that you could recommend that were successful for you in your endeavors during this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to make clear is you're not, what are my we tried to make it very, whenever we ask for money, we try to make it very open-ended. So what options do we have? We will take work study, are there any grants or scholarships that my daughter would qualify for that, we haven't thought about or that you might lead us to research? We just make clear we're not looking for loans, so don't send us loan information, but we tried to just keep it very vague so that whatever thing that they might be able to pull out of a hat, they would pull out for us.
I think we've answered all the questions that were in the queue. Are there any other questions from our attendees tonight? Feel free. We've got an expert in going through this process. You said with 3 of your kids or 2 of your kids?
Well, one's done. The second, we're in process right now. We might not survive, and then another coming down the pipeline.
Okay. And when did y'all start practicing or preparing for financial aid and merit scholarship searches, even college searches? Is there a good starting point now that you've done it and about to do it again?
Yeah, I I would really start looking at the year before. And I tell you what, one thing we learned is that your kids have their own minds and they speak to their friends and they talk about schools that they think are good and that they should be going to. And I think that as a parent, you probably have to massage that list in their minds, and you have to say, well, here's some good points about this school, because they really need to be thinking outside of the things that are important to them in the moment. So I think sometimes you need a ramp of persuasion for kids.
I think this is a nationwide program, the 529 program. Do you have any tips on how you invested besides 529 to save for college or things
I
along those
don't.
lines?
I don't. We did a terrible job, so I'm not qualified to speak on preparing well.
Okay. We just started with my kids and they said start early, so we're trying, but
Yeah.
I have a 5 and a 7-year-old, so I'm realizing now this is a huge mountain we're about to climb over the next
Yeah.
10 to 15 years, and
Yeah, well,
we're ready.
when my firstborn was about a year old, we went to speak to a financial consultant, and he said, "Oh, just put this much in every month, and then when she's done, you'll only have to add this much to the pot." And we laughed and walked out and said we couldn't even do that. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like we've answered all the questions on Facebook Live and in our chat. Are there any other lingering questions? We're trying to do.
Yeah, and Dustin, you know what I can do is I can I actually put together this thing. It started as a Google Sheets that I sent to my friends. Like,
Okay.
here's when you should do it, here's what, and I just turned it into this PDF download. And actually I know a good person who works on 529. So I have this list of resources, and I can send it to you, and if anyone wants that, you can distribute as you want to.
Well, absolutely. Thank you. We did get one question that popped in.
Cool.
Or it's just a thank you. So yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Thank you for giving us your time tonight to speak to many of our parents on Facebook and live on Zoom. We will have this recording on our Facebook page as well as our website, Gifted Arkansas, for any of y'all that would like to go back. But I do encourage y'all to check out her website, meritmore.com. It has as a free resource for parents to find money for your kids and compare colleges and so forth. I think that's an excellent tool. So thank you on behalf of all the parents that are about to start this endeavor.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.